feel like I can have a voice
That's
for radio.
right. Check.
Happy summer Friday night, Oklahoma. We've got all your favorite smooth jazz hits.
That's delightful.
We're going to start the hour off with a new track by Kenny G with his sultry soprano saxophone tones put together for you and your lover. So turn down the lights, pour that wine, and let Kenny G take you away.
I miss all of our outtakes we had in the early days of doing the podcast. Hello and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore. It's really good to be with you today. I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Scott Melson. Hello, sir.
Hello.
It's good to see you as always.
We are in person today.
We're recording in person in Scott's new home office. It's very exciting. Thank you for inviting me into your home as always.
Thanks for coming, man. I'm glad that we did a little switcheroo of the way some of our space was organized here at the house last weekend, and decided to use this space for office space instead of kind of the little loft space we've been using before. And I think it's gonna be nice. I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah, this is nice. I think so we are looking for office space for Let's Fix This and a few other organizations. So listeners, if you own an office building and you have some space you'd like to donate to some really great civic nonprofits, please let me know. We're looking for, I think, 5 to 7 offices and a conference room space, maybe some storage. That would be ideal. Unfortunately, our nonprofits don't have a large budget. So I've been asking around some folks I know, and we're starting to really kind of shop the idea. I think our goal is maybe around the end of the year. And then perhaps, Scott, we could record in like a proper studio again.
That would be amazing. You know, we and by we I mean mostly you, put in a ton of work our studio space, and then we got to use it 4 times, and then COVID happened, something like that.
Yeah, well, with Bailey, we used
with
it.
Bailey, we used it for
like a year.
Was it a year? Was it that long?
Yeah, but we'd really just bought new mics and all that.
We'd really kind of gotten it set up the way we wanted it after we'd moved out of Upper Room Studios.
Yeah, that's right. We went from an extra bedroom to a borrowed office, and then back to our own bedrooms again during the pandemic. So hopefully, maybe now's the time. Anyway, we should perhaps talk about some Oklahoma politics and government happenings, the haps, as they say.
You know, I'll tell you what, I feel like I was gonna say today I'm getting my second wind, or my like fifth wind. I'll be honest, you know, the last few months, the political world has been a struggle for me. You know, I tend to follow it so closely, and have followed it so closely for several years now. And man, just, you know, everything happening here locally, all of the corruption, you know, a really what for me, for a bunch of reasons, was a very, very disheartening legislative session. Honestly, even more so than usual. A lot of the national environment hasn't been great. You know, some of the you know, not just Dobbs, but many of the decisions coming out of the Supreme Court. It's just been my political self has been a little down in the dumps, but I feel that I'm getting back in my groove. Have you felt this way at all?
I actually have felt the exact same way. I mean, it is difficult working in this field now, and I think just for a lot of Oklahomans, I think a lot of folks feel like not just depressed, but demoralized, right? Like that there's like our morale is low in our state when we've seen time and time again, year after year, so many oppressive or misguided laws or policies, attacks on our communities, right? Like,
or
it's
even
really
just,
hard.
Even just policy, like those everything you mentioned is true, but even just as simple as policy that clearly doesn't reflect the will of the populace, right? I mean, we've seen that over and over again, right? Like refusal to expand Medicaid, and that had to be passed by popular vote, right? Refusal to pass medical marijuana, to have it be passed by popular vote. Refusal on the part of the legislature to make investments that people that our state has clearly said that we need and that we want. This fealty to things like tax cuts and deregulation, and now an emerging strain of kind of religiosity, religious extremism in some cases. It's just it's really demoralizing.
It is. I think it's kind of sucked the life out of Oklahomans in many ways. The relentless heat has not helped with that this year
that
either.
Is a fact.
I feel like it got hot quickly and has just remained hot for a long time. I do think there is reason for hope, and maybe we can start here on something that's not even about Oklahoma, but about the vote in Kansas this week to essentially protect the right to abortions for Kansans. And it was, everyone thinks of Kansas as being like Oklahoma, like Missouri, as other plains states, and for it to be a state that was undoubtedly red and would vote to eliminate abortion as soon as they could. But Kansas is a bird of a different feather, if you will, not just because of the Jayhawks, but I think politically they're a little bit different.
Well, they have a Democratic governor.
They do.
Right? And they have a governor who's a Democrat. Their previous governor, Kathleen Sebelius, who served as Secretary of Health and Human Services in the Obama administration, was also Democrat. Yeah. They still have what Oklahoma used to have, which is a very active group in their Republican Party within the legislature who were previously Democrats.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they still have this kind of if you want to call them blue dogs, right? Yep. Or whatever. They got a legislature that still has at the state level, a lot of Joe Manchin types in it. Except they've switched parties already,
right?
So
when Manchin hasn't yet,
right?
That's interesting. I follow some Kansas folks that are like Let's Fix This folks. There's a group called Loud Light up there that really they do civic engagement with, I think, more with youth. And there's several other groups that were all very involved in doing voter registration and helping promote turnout, right? Get out the vote, or GOTV, as we say in the biz.
GOTV.
Yeah, that's GOTV. Yeah. They were instrumental, I think, in this result. And maybe we should reach out to them and see if we can get them on the pod. That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Interesting. So anyway, I think it was a wake-up call. And, of course, this week there is now a flurry of news articles and the Washington Post and CNN and everything else about, well, what happened in Kansas is going to change the landscape of the election before now in November. And that remains to be seen. But I think it does highlight something that we know to be true, right? That we have polling in Oklahoma as well that show that most Oklahomans support the right to abortion with some restrictions, right? And to have a legislature that passed 4 outright, total bans on abortion in one session is, as you said, very out of step with what Oklahoma people want. And so I think seeing what happened in Kansas to me is a signal that when voters wake up a little bit, when the right issue comes along, that we will make our desires known, and that can result in a better, more representative sense of governance.
Have you delved into the have you done a deep dive into the results in Kansas? I have not had a chance yet.
No,
because one thing that I know has been looked at, because I've seen some tweets and headlines alluding to it, but this week it's just been busy for me and I haven't had a chance to really get into it yet. Because you said something really critical, an issue that arises, right? Well, one crucial difference in the midterms and what happened in Kansas on Tuesday. In Kansas, on the ballot in Kansas was essentially, I don't think they call it a referendum, but they were voting whether or not the provision in the Kansas Constitution that protects the right to an abortion, whether that provision should stand or not, right? That specific issue was on the ballot. And that issue, that question, is what failed to pass, right?
Right.
did that translate to did that translate down the ballot in any way? Did that the question you have to answer is because that question will not be on the ballot at a national level in November. It's not going to be, right? So the question then becomes, do enough people feel strongly enough about that issue that it will motivate them to vote for a party that is different than the party they would normally vote for? That's the question. And that is the question that, I will be honest, Tuesday's results notwithstanding, I'm skeptical that the answer is yes.
Right. No, that's a good question. Like, because in Oklahoma, for example, there's not going to be a specific abortion-related question on the ballot.
Right.
There will likely be a question about recreational adult use marijuana.
Right.
Provided that the Secretary of State
certifies that they got the signatures.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But you will often see people say, abortion is on the ballot this year. And they mean that in a way that it means that the elected officials that are going to be, that we are going to vote on, right? The people from the governor on down, U.S. Senate, everything else, that they have a say in policymaking and that thus through them, the issues on the ballot, but it's not directly on the ballot.
Well, and when they say it's on the ballot, like they're not like, I understand the point they're trying to make. They're not wrong about that, right? Because of, people who appoint judges, people who make laws, people, secretaries of state who run elections, like all those sorts of things. But yeah, they're not wrong, but that's a distinction that is meaningful, I think, right? I think that I'm just curious to see, as folks, as people like the folks at 538 and other, kind of data-minded organizations, I'm sure as they delve into this question and try to build it into their modeling, what effect does that have? Like, what effect does it have when there is a specific abortion-related question on the ballot, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. Well, I'll just ask you, what do you think? So the way that this works in Oklahoma, because a lot of people have said, can Oklahoma learn something from Kansas? And the answer is no, because we don't have the protection to abortion is not enshrined in the Oklahoma Constitution. So like what happened in Kansas literally can't happen here because we don't have that provision in our Constitution. But I guess, do you think if someone ran a ballot campaign in Oklahoma to, like, let's say it guarantees the right to an abortion up until, let's say 20 weeks. Basically, let's say that it enshrines the pre-Roe landscape in the Oklahoma Constitution. So you can have an abortion.
Not pre-Roe, pre-Dobbs.
Pre-Dobbs, excuse me. It enshrines that in the Oklahoma Constitution. So you can have abortion up to 20 weeks. There are, yes, it enshrines that in the Oklahoma Constitution.
So we go back, 4 or 5 years, essentially, right, to the way the law was, and it enshrines that, puts that into the state constitution.
Right.
If someone proposed that, do I think that would pass?
Do you think it would get enough signatures to get on the ballot?
It'll get signatures.
And if it was on the ballot, do you think it would pass?
That I don't know. I think there would obviously be a huge no campaign against it. I think the electorate in Oklahoma is different enough from the electorate in Kansas that we can't make too many inferences.
I agree.
And so I think it'd be really tough. I don't know. Like I haven't seen enough polling in state since the Dobbs decision. I assume some of the pollsters are going to publish another public result here before too long that might ask that. But they also might ask that question and not want to publish the results, right?
I mean, right. But that's and I think you're right. Like when I asked that question in my own mind, the answer is yes. I think it would get signatures. Would it pass? I'm not sure, but I don't think it's an automatic no.
No, it might honestly it depends.
It might be a Medicaid expansion thing. It might be a
super close
52-48 kind of a situation.
Yeah, it might be really close, and it would depend a lot on what ballot it's on, right? And then how organized both sides are and how good the messaging is. In Kansas, they had several tangible examples. There was the 10-year-old and all this kind of stuff that like happened during the campaign that really solidified that messaging and brought it home in a way that some issues don't have. And, I saw, of course, everyone reports like anecdotal stories. So I saw a bunch of anecdotes from voters that said, I'm not for abortion, but I don't like this government overreach. And the way that they framed it was that it was a government mandate, right? And people reject that kind of sentiment pretty easily.
Yeah. This leads to another thing I was going to ask you, because you said lots of people said, I'm not for abortion, but this is going too far.
Yeah.
Right. We have not really talked about this. As far as I know, we haven't talked about it on the show at all. And you and I haven't really had the chance to talk about it in person. We've texted slightly. What are your thoughts on the Forward Party?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I had a call about this today. So for listeners who don't know, the Forward Party is been an effort that was kind of Andrew Yang, who was the Democratic candidate for president in 2020, and then ran for the mayor of New York and lost that in the primary there as well. So, and for a while they were just they were like a third party without being an official party. They were real kind of vague on things. But last week, they announced that they were merging with two other organizations. One is called the Save America Movement, and then one is called the Reform America Movement, I think. And the Sam and Ram, as we refer to them in the democracy reform world. So they were largely Republicans in those groups, many conservatives who were really jaded with his rhetoric, his presidency, and certainly the events of January 6th and, from the election through that. And we're trying to appeal to our better angels, right? And to Republicans' better angels as well. So they've all merged now into just the Forward Party. And from what I hear, there may be a couple of other groups that merge with some big names, and that might be really interesting if that happens. But we'll get to that if it happens. And so now they are officially trying to form a third party with the goal of getting on the ballot in every state, I think by 2024, and potentially running a presidential candidate. Now they're going to try to get a bunch of more down ballot candidates first. So local elections, state elections. I know the guy that's like the chair of the Forward Party in Utah. I know there's some Forward people in Oklahoma as well. And it's really interesting. I think their platform as it stands right now is a little scant on details, right? And they're trying to be a party without taking sides on a lot of issues, especially social issues. They've been pretty vocal about support for structural democratic reforms, so like open primaries and ranked choice voting or approval voting, so some kind of Final Five system, because those reforms are absolutely necessary for a third party to make up any ground, right? And to be to get on the ballot and have any success. And so I think right now I'm just kind of sitting back and watching. There's been a lot of blowback against Andrew Yang, particularly from the left this week. There was a block Andrew Yang was trending on Twitter, led by people on the left who see this effort as his attempt to enrich himself, which is, he's not that rich, honestly, but it's also an attempt, like they're afraid that he's going to take votes away from Democrats, which is interesting because I think honestly the whole effort might have more Republicans behind it than it does Democrats, and it could be an effort to take Republican votes away. This is too early to tell, but I think this might be maybe one of the best organized third party efforts since Ross Perot back in 92, right? So
who many people would argue cost George W. Bush the election.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. So I am not intrinsically opposed to the idea of a third party. I think having more political parties would be good in many ways. You know, there's certainly a case to be made for. Now, once you start getting into multiple parties, then you're kind of starting to talk about coalition building in the legislature, and things start to look a lot more parliamentary than what we're used to in the United States. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's bad. I don't know. But
it's good.
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. My quibble with them is twofold. One, I don't understand why now. You know, because I think there are forces at play in our politics right now, and they are not limited to Donald Trump, but he is certainly the most visible face of them, that are potentially existential, right?
Sure.
And you may be right that, I mean, they're going to siphon votes, right? They have to siphon votes unless their entire thing is bringing people in to the political process who are not currently engaged, which is absolutely work that needs to be done. And I'm sure they're doing some of that. Maybe they're doing a lot of it. But unless that's their entire plan, they're going to be peeling votes from somewhere, right? By definition, they are trying to convince people who are currently voting either Democrat or Republican to vote for them instead. Maybe they're going to peel more from the R's. That's fine. But if they peel more from the Dems, right, and the Democratic nominee, whoever they may be, loses to the Republican nominee, which may be Ron DeSantis or maybe Donald Trump or whoever in 2024, that can have like long-term existential consequences to our republic, right? So the fact that they're doing it right now kind of pisses me off. The other thing is that their messaging around some of this really rubs me the wrong way, which is they are doing what I think rubs me the wrong way about some of our media a lot of the time, which is they're both sidesing political extremism. Now, this is not to say that these kind of hardline extremist positions don't exist on both sides of the aisle. They do, right? But if you take the hardline far right position on guns, for example, to be that the Second Amendment guarantees an individual right to own firearms without any restrictions by the government, which is, I think, the most extreme, right? Any gun you want for any reason with no restrictions. That is the most extreme position. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Okay. So the antithesis to that, the most extreme position on the left, is no guns for anyone, anywhere, at any time. Right?
Sure.
Is there any Democrat running for any office at a national level in America who has that as their position?
No.
Whereas what I articulated, I would say, is probably the Republican position for almost every Republican running for federal office.
Right.
So the position of most Democrats, which is, yeah, you can have a shotgun and a rifle to go hunting, and if you want a handgun, you should have a license and you should have to like file with a registry. The Democrat position is actually the middle ground.
Right. It is the compromise position between all guns or no guns.
The mainstream Democratic position is already the middle ground.
Right.
Same thing with abortion. If you take the far right Republican position as no abortions at all for anyone at any time, regardless of rape, incest, or life of the mother, right? The far left position is anybody can have an abortion anytime they want for any reason. Are there Democratic politicians running for office who hold that position? Sure. Are they in the majority? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. The majority position, both of the Democratic Party and the country, by the way, is that abortion should be legal in some cases. Ideally, if we can minimize it, that is best. There need to be exceptions for their like rape, incest, and the life of the mother. And also, most importantly, this is a healthcare decision that should be between a woman and her doctor.
Right.
That is the compromise position, and it is the position of the Democratic Party, right? So I really reject this framing that, like, we need a third party because nobody's fighting for the middle ground. That's bullshit, right? The Democratic Party already is the middle ground of the two extremes.
So
do you see what I'm saying?
No, I totally see. And what I'm envisioning, like, if I was going to make a graphic for this, right, is there's not like a abstract middle that exists between all of these things.
Yes.
So I think that's a really interesting point. I mean their actual platform for the Forward Party
doesn't really talk about anything.
Stays away from these kind of social issues.
Right.
Which is, I think, strategic.
It is strategic, but it also is weird because they're talking about all this division. These are the issues that divide us the most, right? Like, and I guess it just kind of pisses me off because it is 100% true. And anybody who listens to the podcast knows I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal. Like, this is not like shocking to anybody, right? I'm speaking for myself, not for Let's Fix This. But it is absolutely true that if you look in the pantheon of American history, both parties have had periods where they are extreme and out of the mainstream. That is without question. However, at this moment in history, one party is the problem.
Right.
Like now, in 2022, the problem with America and our division is not that both sides have moved radically to the left, right? Or radically to the extremes, right? It is that one party has. Now, if the only thing you know about Democrats is that you follow them on Twitter, then yes, you would think that the Democratic Party as a whole has moved too far to the left. The fact that Joe Biden is the nominee in 2020 and won the presidency, I think belies some notion that the Democratic Party in America has become some like socialist, far left party. Right. If you would like to talk about how far left the Democratic Party is, please talk with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders or Pramila Jayapal or any of the other members of the Progressive Caucus and all the changes that they would like to see in the Democratic Party's messaging and platform.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I saw that 2 members of the squad won their primaries this week. So there's still some voters out there who support them. Yeah,
which is great and which is fine. I just feel like the Forward Party's messaging is that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's voters represent the Democratic Party writ large, and nationally that's just not true.
Oh, right.
Like that's just
not on every issue, right?
Yeah, like right. and that's fine. Those are her voters, and that's fine that she represents them and she does a great job. And like, I'm not ripping on AOC, but I'm just saying she doesn't represent the mainstream of the Democratic Party. Yeah. If she did, she'd be Speaker of the House, and she's not.
Right. That's fair.
Right.
So I was curious about what it would take for a third party to be recognized in Oklahoma. As listeners may know, we actually have 3 parties that are officially recognized by our state right now: the Republicans, the Democrats, and the Libertarians. You can also register as no party or unaffiliated, which is commonly referred to as independent. That is my current. I affiliate as unaffiliated. And then you can mark other on the form. So I guess that means if you personally identify as Green Party or something else, Reform Party, whatever else is out there, you can pick other, but those groups are not officially recognized by the state. So, Scott, do you know what it takes to become recognized by the state of Oklahoma as an official party?
You have to spend $150,000 a year at Swadley's Barbecue for at least 3 years in a row.
That's a good answer, but it's wrong. But I like your creativity. No, first of all, well, I don't say no one should spend that much money there, both for your heart health and because there's better barbecue that exists. No, so it's really not that hard. Scott, I think we could start our own party. Honestly, so you have to file notice with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the State Election Board, at any time except between March 1st and November 15th of even numbered years. So this may be part of why they're doing it now as timing, right? If they're trying to get on the ballot, they can't do it most of next year. All it takes is that you have to collect signatures from registered voters in the state that say they are willing to affiliate with your party, and you have to collect at least 3% of the total votes cast in the last general election for governor. Right. So it's the same basis as like signature collection for ballot initiatives. It's all based on turnout in the last gubernatorial election. So on average for Oklahoma, that's like around 1 million people, right? So the last gubernatorial election for us was in 2018, and turnout was like, I don't know, 1.2 million, 1.4 million, something like that.
So you need like 40,000 signatures.
Yeah.
Dude, call it Let's Party This. Make sure the logo is OU Crimson, and we're there.
Let's party this.
Done.
Just I'm part of the Boomer Party.
Right. It's a Let's Pod This. You don't have to change the logo. Just still LPT.
Oh, I get it now.
Let's party this.
Let's party this. I like it. So yeah, so we just need. So I mean, honestly, turnout this year should be lower. I mean, I'm gonna guess it's like. My prediction is like 989,000, and it says
I'm gonna hold you to that. By the way,
petitions may be circulated for a maximum of 1 year after notice is filed. So basically, you file notice and then start collecting signatures, and then as long as you turn them in, not later than March 1st of even numbered years. So we could file notice today on August 5th. I wonder if they would base it on the previous election or after this election passes, and we just have to meet that. So we could collect up until, the end of February and then turn them in and potentially have a Let's Party This candidate on the ballot next November.
which one of us is running?
Well, not me. Must be you. We're going to run Juno, your dog.
We'll ask Bailey.
Oh, there we go. She's not here. We'll put her up to it.
We just started. This is our first meeting. There's two of us. We have a quorum. We nominate Bailey Perkins.
That's right. now, there is a flip side to this because political parties may cease to exist as well. And the law says that any recognized party shall continue to be recognized if a candidate for that party for any statewide office receives at least 2.5% of the total votes cast in either of the preceding two elections. So if a party goes below that, so basically like the Libertarians, as an example, have got to run a gubernatorial candidate or some statewide candidate, and at least one of their statewide candidates must get at least 2.5% in two elections. So that's an 8-year period, right?
They've done that, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so if that happens, if they drop below that, then such a political organization designation shall terminate 4 years from the date that that party ceases to be recognized or when the political organization regains recognition as a party, whichever is earlier. So I think this has happened before. We've had parties pop up and disappear, but you can kind of bump along that bottom level fairly easily, right? Like in a typical election when, 1 million people vote, chances are 30,000 of them or 25,000 of them are going to be like, both of these major candidates are gross. I'm voting for whoever the other person is, right? And get on the ballot. Now that, of course, the largest group of new voters is among independent or unaffiliated voters, which complicates this a little bit, but it seems like it's not that hard.
I mean, which is good, right?
It is good. Now, I think it's interesting, and I will say this as an unaffiliated, as an independent voter.
A GDI.
What?
A GDI.
What's that?
A goddamn independent.
Listen, we're proud of who we are.
That's a little OU Greek life.
Okay.
Yeah.
For like non-Greek members?
Yeah.
I went to a school that didn't have any Greek stuff. You had to take Greek. It was a course in the theology building. That's all we could do at Southern Nazarene University. A place to begin. Anyway, as an independent voter, the introduction of a third party, first of all, is a misnomer. There are other parties. They're not the third party. They're an additional party. There's already the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, several other minor parties that exist. Not in every state, though. But there, I think, is still a contingent of voters who just don't want to affiliate with a party, right? Yeah. Like, I think people are like, and I blame the two-party duopoly for that. Obama. I don't blame Obama. I meant on hope and change, but I blame the, divide we have right now and just like this infrastructure that exists among the parties to serve their own purposes. What I would like to see, if I'm being totally honest, is like 5 substantial parties, like 5 or so like semi equally powerful parties. Maybe, some are going to be more than others, but I would like to see a multi-party system with proportional representation.
I was literally, as you were saying that, I said in my head, I was like, the only way that works is if you have proportional representation. Now if you do that. Now, for listeners, proportional representation means that instead of a first past the post system, right? So right now in CD5, for instance, we'll have 2 candidates running for Oklahoma's 5th congressional seat, and whoever gets 50% plus 1 will represent the entire district, right? In a proportional representation system, you would have representation proportional to the number of votes that you get. So if you had 5 candidates that were running, then you would have those. Andy, help me out here. It gets split up based on exactly what. Yeah, like the number of seats for that district gets split up. So every congressional district might have 10 seats or something.
Yeah, it depends on whatever the number is. Yeah.
Yeah, so you set every district gets 10 seats, and if the Republican Party gets 50% of the vote, then they get 5 of them, and then the remaining 5 seats are divvied up among the other 4 parties.
Right, proportionally. Right. So in a state like Oklahoma, where even if we kept some things the same, we have 5 congressional seats. If we had proportional representation now, in a given election, it ends up being like, essentially like a 3-2 divide in our votes. So if proportional, we should have like 3 Republican congressmen and 2 Democratic congressmen.
Except most of so that would be if the entire state of Oklahoma was one district. Right. What would probably happen is that we would still have 5 congressional districts.
But multi-member districts.
Right. And
I could see us. I'd like that idea, but I think like an easier path is to keep the 435 seats in Congress.
But every state becomes a district.
Yes, every state is then and that is honestly more proportional to. I mean, we can add more people.
That's interesting. I've never thought of doing it that way. I'd always thought of, so you'd have the same number you'd have 435 districts, but each of them would have multiple.
I mean, honestly, if it's up to me, if I had a magic wand to wave, I would, just combine the House and Senate, and so Oklahoma would have 7, right? Those other 2 just get allocated everywhere evenly.
So 535 altogether.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably better ways to do it, but this seems like the simplest way where we don't have to buy any extra desks.
We're breaking a little news here, Andy. Are you officially in the abolish the Senate camp?
I don't like that word abolish. I said merge on purpose. We're just going to merge the 2 chambers.
But you're saying a unicameral legislature.
Yep.
With 535 members.
That is proportionally representative to the people.
There's technically 538 members, right? That's where 538 comes from.
Right.
Yeah. So there's the 535, and then there's DC, PR, and Guam?
I think so.
Yeah.
Do they get a vote, though, or are they just there?
I think they're just there.
They don't.
No, they vote in committee.
Well, what a stupid system.
I think they vote in committee and not on the floor.
I mean, if we want to go all in, Scott, I'll just say this. I think, I think we should do it with the Senate or merge it with the House, and then we should either cut these other nations loose or make them actual states, right? Like Puerto Rico. If Hawaii is
guys, here's Andy saying DC and Puerto Rican statehood.
This is my opinion.
I'm on board.
So there's a group, and speaking of DC statehood, there's a group there called something about Douglas County. So essentially the territory of DC proper used to be like a county, and they gave the land. And so there's an effort to essentially not cede the land, but de-cede the land to make it into that territory again and have it be its own little state, which I think is really interesting. So anyway, I'm fine with DC statehood. I'm fine with Puerto Rican statehood and Guam. I mean, if we're going to have Hawaii and Alaska, those are whole other countries. They're way out there. Look at a globe and see how far away Hawaii is.
It's a ways out there. how did anybody find that Hawaii exists? Right? Like, no, but I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like, you are sailing across the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
It is gigantic.
Yeah.
You don't know where you're going. What are the chances you just run into Hawaii?
Yeah. That's a good question. I
Right?
wonder who,
It's like a needle in a haystack. Who found Hawaii?
right. Well, and there were already people there. Who was the first?
I mean,
How did the native Hawaiians get there, I guess?
these are all
I'll spend my Friday evening on Wikipedia, I think.
questions for another podcast.
Do you need to wrap up?
I do.
All right,
I do.
well-
I've got. We had some stuff on our list to talk about here locally, and we didn't. But this was fun.
It was just fun. And listeners, you know that the State Board of Education made some bad decisions and really knocked down Tulsa and Mustang schools related to House Bill 1775. We'll come back to that later. That's an ongoing saga. And of course, later this month, there is a runoff election. Most places in the state have an election. I think maybe everywhere, right? The Democratic Senate has a race. That's statewide. And there's a bunch of Republican races for Senate as well. So August 23rd, don't forget to vote. Do not forget to vote. Primary elections matter too, because this will determine who is going to be on the ballot in November. All right, well, listeners, this officially then brings us to the end of the episode. Scott, thanks for being here.
Thanks for coming. This was delightful. I'm feeling energized and like ready to go. Also, for the quick little plug, not for me, for our listeners that are, if you're listening, you're interested in politics. For our listeners who also like to read, fantastic book to check out. It's called The Man Who Ran Washington: The Life and Times of James A. Baker III. James Baker was Secretary of State in the George H.W. Bush administration. He was Chief of Staff for George H.W. Bush as well as Ronald Reagan. Also served as Secretary of the Treasury. Ran multiple winning presidential campaigns. Really a towering figure in American political life throughout the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Many people would say, and I think actually Aaron Sorkin has said, he is the kind of real life inspiration for Leo McGarry for fans of The West Wing. Just an absolutely phenomenal book and a great read. So if you're looking for something to fill your time here in the dog days of summer, check it out.
Excellent. That's good. We should put out a summer reading list next year.
We should.
I've got a few books that I've purchased and not read yet that should be on that
Right.
list. All right, listeners. Well, thanks for being here with us. Please go to our website. Go to letsfixthis.org/donate or /volunteer and sign up. We are all in on voter registration between now and October 14th. Our goal is only 1,000 people, which sounds like not many, but if you think about how much time we have left, that's a huge lift. We've got events this Saturday, next Saturday, more events coming all the time. Please show up, sign up. You can come hang out with me, maybe with Scott too, and register some new voters. Our state desperately needs you.
We need more deciders.
We do, because decisions are made by those who show up. Have a good week.